The first time I met him, I was already planning my escape. The second time, he made me wish I hadn't. The air smelled of expensive champagne and lies. Strings hummed from a live orchestra. Crystal chandeliers trembled with the laughter of people who'd never known hunger. And I, in a white silk suit that cost more than my dignity, was being paraded as someone's prize. Welcome to the Monroe-Lancaster wedding, where love wasn't invited, but appearances were everything. Elliot Monroe, the heir of one of New York's oldest elite families, that's me. And the man I was promised to, the alpha everyone in the room whispered about with admiration or fear, was Adrian Lancaster, the so-called Silver Wolf of Wall Street. He stood at the far end of the ballroom, dark hair slicked back, posture sharp as a blade. He wasn't smiling, he never did, but when his gray eyes found mine across the room, the world stilled. For a second, I thought I saw something raw there, something that looked too much like desire. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. We were an omega and an alpha bound by contract, not choice. The papers said union, but everyone knew what it really was, a merger. My father wanted power, his wanted reputation. So they tied us together like two signatures, sealing a deal neither of us could refuse. What they didn't know was that I hated alphas, especially ones who thought they could own me. I'd spent my whole life being told I was delicate, a beautiful, fragile omega meant to submit. My smile was currency. My silence was obedience. But inside, I'd been building walls so high even heat couldn't melt them. And Adrian Lancaster, with his smoldering control and quiet dominance, was the last person I wanted breaking through. The ceremony was as perfect as a headline, the union of power and beauty. Cameras flashed, guests gasped, and somewhere in the middle of the vows, my throat closed up. Adrian's hand brushed mine as he slipped the ring onto my finger, and the warmth of his skin sent a strange tremor down my spine. For a man who looked like he could freeze over hell itself, his touch burned. "Smile," he murmured under his breath. His voice was deep, steady, too calm. "They're watching." I smiled. I always did. That night, the mansion on Long Island smelled of roses and salt water. The ocean roared beyond the glass walls, wind dragging against the curtains like a restless ghost. I stood by the balcony, champagne in hand, staring at my reflection in the window. The ring on my finger glinted like a shackle. Behind me, his footsteps echoed. Slow, unhurried. "You're not drinking," he said. I didn't turn. "I'm pretending." A pause. "At what?" "That I'm happy." When I finally faced him, he was leaning against the doorway, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. His gaze was unreadable, but it carried weight, the kind that pressed down on your chest until you either broke or begged. He walked closer. "You think I wanted this?" "I think you got exactly what you wanted," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "An obedient omega to decorate your perfect life." His jaw clenched. "You don't know me. Neither do you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension was alive, breathing, filling the space between our heartbeats. Then, in a whisper that wasn't meant to be kind, he said, "You're not what I expected." "Good," I replied, lifting my chin. "I don't plan to be." Days passed like polished lies. We played our roles, the perfect couple in public, strangers in private. The tabloids called us the golden pair, unaware that our smiles were choreographed, our touches timed. He worked late. I avoided dinner. We shared a house, a name, a bed we never touched. But what haunted me most wasn't the silence, it was the way he looked at me sometimes. Like he wanted to say something but swallowed it whole instead. Then came the night I caught him bleeding. It was nearly midnight when I heard the crash. I followed the sound to his study, where shattered glass glittered on the floor like spilled stars. Adrian was there, hand cut open, blood dripping from his knuckles as he stared at a photograph on his desk, a younger version of himself, holding a man whose face was half burned away by time. "Adrian," I began. "Don't," he said, voice rough. "Go back to bed." I stepped closer anyway. "You're bleeding." "I've been bleeding for years," he muttered, turning away. Something inside me shifted then, something small and dangerous. Maybe pity, maybe curiosity, maybe the first crack in the walls I'd built. I reached out, and before I could think, my hand brushed his. His blood was warm, too human. He froze. So did I. Why do you care? He asked quietly. I don't. But the tremor in my voice betrayed me. His eyes softened, barely. You should stop lying. You're terrible at it. That night, I dreamed of him not as my alpha, but as a man standing alone in the rain, looking up at a sky that never looked back. When I woke, the sheets beside me were cold. Weeks blurred into months. The more I learned about him, the less I understood. He was ruthless in business, relentless in control, but there were moments fleeting, fragile when I saw the truth hiding beneath the armor. The way his fingers trembled when thunder rolled. The nightmares he never spoke of. The quiet kindness he tried so hard to bury. And damn it, I began to care. That was my first mistake. Because the more I cared, the more it hurt to remember that this wasn't love. This was survival. Until one day he kissed me. It happened in the greenhouse. Rain drummed on the glass roof. Flowers leaned toward the storm. And I was trimming roses, his mother's favorites, when he appeared, silent as ever. You shouldn't be out here, he said softly. Why? Afraid I'll wilt. A faint smile ghosted across his lips. You're too stubborn for that. When I turned to retort, he was closer than I expected. Too close. His breath brushed my skin, his eyes tracing me like he was memorizing a secret he had no right to know. And then, without warning, his mouth found mine. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't hesitant. It was years of restraint breaking open, heat, hunger, heartbreak all at once. When he pulled back, I could barely breathe. Don't, I whispered. Don't make this harder. His voice was a quiet storm. You think I wanted to fall for you? My heart stuttered. Then don't. He smiled, the saddest thing I'd ever seen. Too late. That was when everything began to unravel. Because real love wasn't supposed to exist in an arrangement built on control. But somehow, between the silence and the lies, between his anger and my defiance, it bloomed anyway. And that terrified me more than anything. The kiss changed everything and nothing. For the next few days, we barely spoke. The air between us was thick with something neither of us dared to name. Every glance felt like a confession. Every silence like a promise we didn't want to keep. I tried to pretend it hadn't happened. Pretend I didn't wake up thinking about his mouth, the way his breath trembled against my skin. But the truth was cruel the moment his lips touched mine. Something inside me surrendered, and I hated myself for it. Because falling for Adrian Lancaster meant losing the last part of myself I still controlled. The gossip came first. It started with whispers at charity galas and quiet questions from family friends, people who smiled too sweetly and cared too much about appearances. Then came the tabloids. The cold alpha melts? Or inside the Monroe-Lancaster marriage? Trouble or temptation? Our publicist called it attention. Adrian called it noise. I called it hell. Every photograph of us became a battlefield, his hand on my waist. My smile rehearsed to perfection. But behind the flashbulbs, I could feel the heat of his body, the way his thumb lingered just a second too long on my skin. And every time he did, I felt myself breaking a little more. One night, during another one of those charity dinners where the rich applauded themselves for caring, a senator's son cornered me by the bar. You're prettier in person, he said, grinning, glass in hand. I'd almost believe your marriage is real. I forced a polite smile. Almost. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Everyone knows Lancaster's not exactly loyal. Men like him don't settle. Not even for someone like you. Before I could respond, a shadow fell over us. Adrian stood behind him, expression unreadable, but his eyes were glacial. Walk away, Adrian said. The senator's son laughed a mistake. Relax, Lancaster. We're just talking. Adrian stepped forward, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. If you enjoy talking, do it with your jaw intact. The man paled, muttered something, and disappeared into the crowd. For a moment, it was just the two of us. The air vibrated with unspoken fury, his, mine, both. You didn't have to do that, I said, keeping my tone cold. He disrespected you. I can defend myself. His gaze darkened. You shouldn't have to. I hated how that made my chest ache. You don't get to play hero now. He stared at me for a long time, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Maybe I'm tired of being the villain. Later that night, he found me on the balcony again, the same place where our war had begun. The city glowed beneath us, endless lights, endless lies. You shouldn't let them get to you, he said quietly. Funny? I murmured. Coming from the man who built this gilded cage. He didn't flinch. I never wanted to cage you, Elliot. Then what do you want from me? He hesitated. The truth. I laughed bitterly. You wouldn't survive it. Try me. The words burned on my tongue. I want to hate you, Adrian. But every time you look at me, I forget why I should. Something broke in his face, then a flicker of pain, almost human. He reached out slowly, as if afraid I'd vanish. His hand brushed my cheek, and for once I didn't pull away. I don't want to hurt you, he said. Then stop pretending this isn't going to end in ruin. His thumb lingered against my skin. Maybe ruin's the only honest thing we have left. And then he kissed me again. Softer this time. Desperate. Real. After that, we stopped pretending. We still played our parts in public, the perfect couple, all smiles and grace, but behind closed doors, we became something else entirely. Something raw. Something dangerous. He'd come home late from the office, tie loose, exhaustion carved into his features. I'd be waiting in the kitchen, barefoot, making tea I knew he wouldn't drink. And without a word, he'd pull me close, bury his face in my neck, and breathe like I was the only thing keeping him alive. Sometimes we fought loud, reckless, brutal words thrown like knives. Sometimes we made love quiet, slow, reverent, as if trying to memorize each other's scars. We were fire and ice, crashing, melting, burning, and I knew it couldn't last. One morning, the illusion shattered. I woke to find him gone, his side of the bed cold. When I went downstairs, the butler was waiting with an envelope heavy, embossed, the kind of thing only powerful families used for war. It was from my father. The letter was short. You've embarrassed us enough. The contract is void if he dishonors the family name. Keep your distance or we'll destroy him. My hands shook as I read it. They weren't threatening me, they were threatening him. When Adrian came home that night, I confronted him. You knew, I said, holding the letter out. He didn't deny it. I was trying to protect you. By lying to me? He rubbed a hand over his face, frustration bleeding through his calm. Elliot, your father, don't you dare say his name like you care. I do care. The words were sharp, breaking. You think this is easy for me? Every day I'm fighting battles you don't see, trying to keep both our worlds from collapsing. Then why not let it collapse? I snapped. Maybe it's time it burned. He looked at me like I'd said something blasphemous. You don't understand what you're asking. Maybe not. But I understand what I'm losing. The silence after that was unbearable. Finally, he whispered, I can't let them destroy you, and I can't keep being something I'm not. That was the night I left. I moved into a small apartment downtown, nothing like the marble mansion. But it was mine. For the first time in years, I could breathe. No cameras. No expectations. No lies. But freedom has a strange taste, bitter, hollow, too quiet. I missed him. God help me, I missed him. I told myself it was habit. That I missed the routine, not the man. But every time it rained, I found myself looking at the door, half expecting him to walk through it, soaking wet and stubborn as ever. He didn't. Until he did. It was 3 weeks later. I came home from work, yes, work, because I'd finally started at a small design studio and found him waiting in the hallway, still in his suit, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Elliot, he said, voice rough. Go home, Adrian. I am home. Don't do this. He stepped closer. I can't stop thinking about you. Then try harder. He exhaled, pained. You think I haven't? Every second without you feels wrong. Good, I said bitterly. Now you know how I felt for months. He flinched but didn't move. Your father's been digging. He wants to expose me. He's planning to, I don't care. Yes, you do, he said, eyes blazing. Because if he wins, you lose everything. I stared at him, shaking. Then let it all fall apart. For the first time, I saw fear in him, real, unguarded fear. You don't mean that. I mean every word. He closed the distance between us, hands trembling as they cupped my face. Then let me fall with you. And before I could answer, his mouth was on mine again, fierce, desperate, final. The next morning, the world found out. Headlines screamed across every screen. The Lancaster-Monroe marriage scandal. Leaked emails reveal hidden love affair. Except the emails weren't real. They were fabricated, part of my father's plan to end Adrian's career and humiliate me into silence. Reporters swarmed the building. Protesters gathered outside. And suddenly, love wasn't beautiful, it was ammunition. I was branded a manipulative omega who seduced an alpha for status. Adrian was painted as a predator who ruined a pure air. We became the perfect scandal. And the world, as always, enjoyed the show. He tried to protect me. I tried to save him. We both failed. By the time the lawyers got involved, the damage was done. My father withdrew every business tie from the Lancaster family, leaving Adrian's empire bleeding. The board voted to remove him. When I found him in his office, it was empty, the desk cleared, the view outside cold and endless. They're taking everything, he said simply. I stepped forward. Then let me help. He smiled, tired, broken. You already did. You made me human again. My throat tightened. Don't you dare make this sound like goodbye. He looked at me, eyes storm gray and gentle all at once. It's not goodbye, Elliot. It's survival. Then survive with me. He shook his head. You deserve a life without war. And you think I'll find it without you? He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Maybe someday you'll understand that love sometimes means walking away. And then he left. I didn't see him for months after that. The scandal faded, as they always do. The public moved on to the next tragedy. My father's health declined, karma catching up in slow, deliberate steps. And I tried to rebuild. I kept working. I stopped checking the news. I stopped hoping for a text that never came. But on quiet nights, when the world outside was nothing but rain and memory, I'd catch myself whispering his name just to feel something again. Until one morning I got a letter. No signature. Just a single sentence written in his handwriting. Meet me where the ocean starts. The place was real, our place. The cliff on the California coast where we'd taken our wedding photos, pretending to be happy. When I arrived, the sun was setting, gold spilling into the sea, wind pulling at my hair. And there he was, standing at the edge of the world, just like the first time. He turned when he heard my footsteps. Still pretending? I asked softly. Not anymore, he said, voice trembling. For a moment, we just looked at each other. The world had taken everything, wealth, status, peace, but somehow it hadn't taken this. I lost everything, he said. So did I. He stepped closer. Then maybe we can start with nothing. I laughed, tears spilling before I could stop them. You always were terrible at proposals. He smiled, a real one this time, raw, imperfect, beautiful. So say yes anyway. And I did. Because love, in the end, wasn't about rules or contracts or perfect timing. It was about surviving the storm and finding each other on the other side, bruised, changed, but still reaching for the same light. When he kissed me this time, it didn't feel like fire, it felt like home. The ocean roared below us, waves crashing against the cliff like applause for the two fools who had finally stopped running. His hands trembled against my jaw, as if he still didn't believe I was real. I didn't either. But the salt on his lips was real. The warmth of his body pressed against mine was real. And for the first time since the day we met, I wasn't pretending. We stood there until the sky turned violet and the stars began to bloom. Quiet witnesses to the end of everything that had once broken us. He exhaled against my shoulder. I kept thinking if I let you go, you'd be free. I smiled through the tears. And I kept thinking if I stayed, I'd lose myself. Were we both wrong? Maybe, I said softly. Or maybe love was never about being right. He chuckled low, weary, beautiful. You always were better at saying things that hurt. Good, I said, brushing my thumb along his jaw. You needed someone to. He leaned into the touch, closing his eyes. Then don't stop. We didn't return to New York. That chapter was over, burned, buried, gone. Instead, we found a small house by the coast, nothing glamorous, nothing grand. It smelled of wood and coffee and rain. The kind of place where no one cared about last names, only laughter. He sold what was left of his company. I quit trying to fix the ruins of my family's name. For a while, we just existed. We woke with the sunrise, cooked together, fought over grocery lists, and fell asleep tangled in sheets that smelled like salt and warmth. It was simple. It was ordinary. It was perfect. But peace was a strange thing. It made room for all the emotions we'd buried under survival. Some nights, I'd wake to find him sitting by the window, staring at the horizon. You're thinking again, I'd murmur half asleep. He'd glance back, smile faintly. I'm remembering. Don't, I whispered. We survived it. He'd nod. But I knew some ghosts don't vanish. They just learn to sit quietly beside you. One afternoon, we drove along the coast, the sky painted in endless blue. He had one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my thigh. The radio hummed an old love song neither of us knew, and the sunlight caught on his hair like it belonged there. I turned to him. Do you ever miss it? He raised an eyebrow. What? The power. The name. The empire. He thought for a moment. No, he said finally. But sometimes I miss the version of myself I thought I had to be. The one who believed control could save him. And now, he smiled soft, honest. Now I know I didn't need control. I needed you. I laughed. That's terribly cheesy, Mr. Lancaster. He squeezed my knee. That's terribly true, Mr. Monroe. The wind carried our laughter down the highway. For once, the future didn't feel like a trap. It felt like an open road. But love, real love, always tests you again. It was winter when the past came knocking. A lawyer's letter, neatly folded, sitting in our mailbox like a ghost from another life. My father had died. The news hit like ice, not grief, not quite relief, just silence. The kind that comes when something you've feared your whole life suddenly ends. The letter included his will. A portion of the estate, a mansion, some shares, the remnants of the Monroe name was now mine. Adrian found me sitting on the porch, letter in hand. You okay? I nodded. I should feel something, but I don't. He sat beside me. Sometimes absence feels heavier than loss. I looked at him, eyes burning. He spent his life trying to make me ashamed of who I was. And now he wants to leave me the pieces of his empire, like some kind of apology. He took my hand. Then don't accept the apology. Accept the freedom. Took me a long time to understand what he meant. A week later, we drove to the Monroe estate, the place where I'd grown up behind marble walls and cold silences. The staff was gone. The air smelled like dust and regret. In the grand hall, I found the portrait me, 16, dressed in white, painted to look obedient. Beneath it, my father's signature. Adrian stood behind me quietly as I stared at that boy I used to be. I used to think he hated me, I said. But maybe he just hated the part of himself that I reminded him of. Adrian nodded. Then let's stop living like we owe him peace. I took one last look at the painting, then turned to him. Burn it. He didn't hesitate. The flames caught fast, bright, furious, alive. We watched as the image of my father's perfect omega heir turned to ash. When it was done, he pulled me into his arms. You're free now, he whispered. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Months passed. Seasons changed. We built a life so different from the one we were raised for that it felt almost rebellious. He started working with small local businesses, helping rebuild what corporate greed had broken. I began designing again, not for brands, not for money, but for people who wanted something beautiful and honest. We didn't need a mansion or headlines. We had each other, and that was enough. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me like he still couldn't believe I'd stayed. Once I asked him why. Because, he said quietly, The first time I saw you, I thought you were something fragile. I didn't know you'd be the one to teach me how to survive. I smiled. And the first time I saw you, I swore I'd break your heart. He grinned, leaning closer. You did. Sorry. Don't be. It started everything. We never had a wedding. The one they gave us didn't count. So one summer evening, as the sun dipped low over the sea, we stood barefoot on the beach and said our vows, just us, the wind, and the sound of the tide. I don't have promises, I said, voice trembling. Not the kind they write in fairy tales. But I have this, my heart, messy and stubborn as it is. It's yours. He smiled, eyes wet. And I don't have perfection, but I have honesty. I love you without the armor, without the rules. Always will. We exchanged simple rings, silver, imperfect, hand-carved by a friend from town. When he slid it onto my finger, I whispered, now it fits. He laughed. It always did. You just didn't believe it yet. We kissed as the waves touched our feet, salt water mingling with the taste of something new. Peace. Years later, I found him in the garden, sunlight scattered across his hair, hands covered in soil as he planted a row of white lilies. You know, I said, leaning against the doorframe, you're surprisingly domestic for a former corporate alpha. He looked up, smirking. And you're surprisingly bad at watering plants for someone who claims to be nurturing. Excuse me? He grinned, standing and wiping his hands on his jeans. You killed the basil. It was suicidal, I argued. He laughed, that same rare, unguarded laugh that still undid me. Come here. I crossed the yard, sun warm on my back. He pulled me in by the waist, dirt and all. Do you ever think about how far we've come? I asked softly. He nodded. Every day. We walked through hell to get here. And would you do it again? In a heartbeat. That night, we sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. The ocean whispered below, steady and infinite. He rested his head on my shoulder. You know what I've realized? What? That love isn't the grand gestures. It's the small ones. Coffee in the morning. The way you hum when you cook. The silence that doesn't need to be filled. I smiled. You're getting poetic in your old age. He chuckled. You make me soft. Good, I murmured. The world was hard enough. In the distance, lightning flickered, not a storm, just a reminder that even peace comes with echoes. He reached for my hand. We'll face the next one together? Always. I looked out at the horizon, remembering the boy I used to be, the one trapped in a marriage that wasn't love, who thought freedom meant running away. He was gone now, but not forgotten. He'd led me here, to this man, to this life. Maybe love wasn't about escaping the world. Maybe it was about finding someone who made it worth staying. Years later, people still whispered about the Monroe-Lancaster scandal, two men who defied power, burned tradition, and disappeared from the spotlight. Some said we fell apart. Some said we never existed at all. But every morning, when I woke to the sound of waves and the quiet rhythm of his breathing beside me, I knew the truth. We didn't fall apart. We fell into something real. One evening, long after the world had stopped watching, I asked him, do you ever think we disappointed them? He smiled, eyes crinkling. That was the point, wasn't it? And we laughed, free, fearless, finally unafraid to love in the open. The sea kept singing. The stars kept burning. And in a small house by the coast, two men who'd broken every rule finally learned how to live. Together. Forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.